Welcome everyone. Today's session, my name is Darlene Hines and I am your GMIST host for this morning. Our session today is Zero Waste, one event at a time. And our guest speaker, we have two today, so we're really lucky. It's Susan and Heather, and they're with Florida Recyclable, or Recyclable Florida, I guess. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, Darlene. Thank you. And thank you to GMIST, and thank you to everyone that's here. And I'm Heather Armstrong. I'm Executive Director of Recycle Florida today. And my fabulous partner here is...
I'm Sue Flak. I am proud to be part of Recycle Florida today. As a board member and the secretary. And my other hat is I am the recycling coordinator for Indian River County, Florida. And happy to be here and welcome everybody. And I'm going to come and see everybody in Prince Edward Island, if not Nova Scotia, because those are my two favorite places in the whole world. So there you go.
Well, so you'll have to make sure that you tell me when you're going so that I can join you. We'll have to make it a research and development project.
That's right. We'll just wait until the snow is all gone.
That's right. And with that, we'll go ahead and get today's presentation started. Just to do a quality check here, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, today you're going to be in for a treat. We hope that you gain a lot of information, a lot of takeaways. We are going to condense this share so that you have an opportunity to, talk and ask questions. We may not have all of the answers, but we definitely have resources, and we can all work together to make sure that we're having our events as close to zero waste, one event at a time as possible. And with that, we're going to begin. So our learning objectives for today, and Sue, I can't see you, so just give me 1 second. Let me see if I can show, at least so that I can see you, Sue. Okay. Can everyone still see the full presentation?
Yeah, there's a couple of black boxes now.
Okay. I think because Sue, I can see who's speaking. If there's ever, and it's because of the panel here. If you can't see any of the information, just let me know and I'll change the screen setting. But this will be provided to you in PDF format, so everyone will have this afterwards. So the learning objectives for today, we just really want for you to have some takeaways, just nuggets of information that you can use and implement into your own programs. Everyone's program is going to be different. So that's what the important thing that we hope that you glean from today's presentation. Your program isn't going to be exactly like anyone else's. So whatever you hear today that you think may work well for you, we hope that you can utilize and implement. Anything else that you'd like to add, Sue?
Yes, and so just to piggyback on what Heather said, there will be a lot of checklists and tons and tons of information thrown out here in this slide deck today. So please don't feel like you really need to take notes or that I'm going to address every bullet or Heather will. But all of these checklists will be at your service for however you want to use them. I'm personally a checklist person, so I think I would take advantage of that. But if not, that's okay too. Just so you know, all of the information, like Heather said, will be available. So I'm going to start with this slide, and I'm going to try my hardest. I've been doing a lot of research and my due diligence in the last few weeks about Canada and how things run up there and your recycling. And I was talking to Darlene earlier this morning and how different it really is throughout the entire country. I'm from Buffalo originally, and so very, very familiar with my neighbors to the north, Ontario, and how they work recycling there. And also doing some research now on Vancouver, because Vancouver has been in the news and a very robust recycling program that they're running there and doing some very innovative things. So I'm so impressed with everything that's going on in Canada. So with that in mind, I wanted to say that what is a zero waste event? So a zero waste event is striving for a 90% diversion rate. Which is pretty intense. But in order to get to that 90% diversion rate, we have to really be proactive and start changing the way that we think. So when I say starting to rethinking about being upfront, taking the bull by the horns and making sure you're well prepared before the event takes place. Rethinking about what you're using or what you have used in the past. And then starting to maybe refuse. So I don't need to use those paper cups or those plastic cups. We can use reusable containers and refill stations. And that, of course, will reduce the amount of waste that is, that comes about at the event. And then also, obviously, reusing is so important. Reusing those items, maybe reusing dishes, maybe reusing your silverware. And what should come last? Recycling. So I know a lot of times we would like to put recycling first, but really the paradigm shift should be that recycling should come last. And that should be the least of your big five. Heather, you want to add anything?
No, so I think you got it.
Okay, so I just wanted to briefly address some of the challenges that we have with recycling and zero waste events. So I think it's really important for before an event, you need to know all of your costs up front. And that is kind of a meaty kind of goal, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. But cost is an issue. It's an economic issue because in the world of recycling, if you don't have an end use for that product, you're not really going to want to recycle or have the ability to recycle because of the upfront costs of collection and transportation and sorting facilities and all those big things. And also it's the desire of the end use of the product. So in America, for example, maybe the most desirable plastics would be number 1 and number 2. And maybe not so much for the other plastics. There's just simply more plastic product out there than we can possibly handle, whether it's the United States or Canada or any country in the world, actually. And then another big challenge that we have is confusion. So we have a lot of wish cycling, people that want to recycle everything because it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy, but not everything can go into your recycle bin. We have to really know upfront and before your event, what can be recycled, what does your hauler in that particular area take? And also the challenge that there really is no common ground, whether it's the United States or Canada, we have no regulations that are standard throughout the country. So everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So before an event, it's very important to address the concept of confusion. And then, of course, with confusion, we know comes contamination hand in hand. About 1/4 of all the materials that's collected at events is contaminated. And that just means that there's items in there that do not belong in there. And one of the ways we can really reduce contamination, if you look at that box to the right, I put it on there because of the misconceptions that we have. One of the biggest is these numbers that we see on the bottom of plastics. So for example, I'll just give you an example. Number 3 is PVC piping. Now, PVC piping is definitely not recyclable, but yet we say, oh, numbers 1 through 7, we can put in the bin or the cart. Another example would be number 6, which is styrofoam, and styrofoam is definitely not recyclable, at least at our facilities. So being aware of these 3 things, even way before, when you're just getting the concept of an event, I think is important. Heather, do you want to add anything?
No, and just when you're hearing this, just know that there are resources that are going to come that can sort of curtail some of the costs and the confusion and contamination. So we want for you to kind of look at the big picture for why you're doing this, but we're also going to give you some resources on how you can counteract some of this.
So these are some of the best practices that we're going to talk about today in more detail as the slide deck continues. But again, I can't strive enough building your communities up front, knowing your communities, your rules, your bottles, something that you need to think about up front. And then the importance of forming a green team. The green team is there to help educate not only your staff in the front of the house, your staff in the back of the house, but also educate the actual attendees at the event of what your goals for making your event a zero event. And then consistency. Consistency and signage go hand in hand. You want to be consistent and very upfront with your signage. One of the big strategies is never put a recycling bin by itself. Always put a recycling bin next to a trash can so that you're not leaving no choice. You're always leaving a choice of where an item can go. And signage is so important. So we want to think of signage as universal, almost like that stop sign that when you see that anywhere in the world that you go, you know exactly what you need to do. And same with your signage, both in the front of the house and the back of the house for your event. Needs to be consistent, simple, and again, your green team can help educate on the proper signage. And then food recovery, so important. And just listening to the wonderful lady on here talking about the gleaning and how important it is for food recovery. Very, very important for you to know ahead of time where your extra food is going to go, who can recover that food, and the transportation that's going to be involved, the logistics of recovering your food. And then making good choices. Again, you know, can we get rid of the plastic water bottles and do a reusable water station? What are my choices going to be to help me obtain as zero waste of an event as I possibly can? And again, education is key, very important. Heather?
Nothing to add. Sue covered it. So next we're going to talk about how do you operate events before, during, and after. And our kind friend Joe England of the city of Orlando was willing to share this wonderful guide with us. And Sue and I are going to give you the highlights of it for how you might want to work to navigate through hosting your own green event. And this is called the Guide to Green Works for Events. So before the event. So can we, oh, go ahead, Sue.
No, I was gonna say there's that little black box up top, but.
Yeah, I had to move it over. Let me move it over to the side too. Go ahead.
I love that. So this again is just kind of a organizer's checklist. And again, any of these large events, and perhaps I'm speaking to the choir, are so front loaded. We have to be so organized and so ready before the event even takes place. So most of these slides and checklists here are to help you get organized and make sure you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's before the event actually takes place. So we've talked about signage. We've talked about the importance of choosing the correct partners, making sure that if you are going to compost, that you have that company already set up, making sure that you're working with your haulers, your trash haulers, or your recycling haulers, so you know what the parameters are there, making sure that you have all of your partners in place, whether it's a dish company that's going to provide the dishes for you and clean them, whatever it is, making sure you have those. And then your sustainable checklist. So making sure that not only are you being sustainable, but that your exhibitors are being sustainable. What are they bringing? Are we looking at a ton of swag items? Is there ways that we can use QR codes instead of bringing all those swag items that people throw away anyway? Making sure that perhaps their business cards are on a QR code instead of having to hand out business cards. All of those little tips that will help not only your attendees be sustainable, but also your exhibitors and your volunteers who are working. Let's see, what other ones do we want to touch on here, Heather, that I think are real important? Suppliers, making sure that you're, oh my gosh, that's such a big one. And that goes back to making the good choices of making sure you're using suppliers that are either sustainable, maybe it's compostable silverware instead of silverware. I think that that's really important.
And then once you have your event list together, and that list wasn't exhaustive, it was just an idea, and everyone's list should be managed to what you want for your event. Something that you might want to think about is how you're going to actually set up your event. So your food and beverage, the distribution, as Sue was saying, if you're going to use single-use products, if you're going to have a policy, you want to make sure you have it visible for individuals to see and encourage them. It goes back to the communication and marketing plan. Let them know beforehand that you don't want the reoccurring waste. So tell them what they should bring. Tell them that there will be water stations. Tell them that you are working towards sustainability. Sue talked a lot about the vendors in the previous slide. Make sure that the vendors that you are working with have a clear direction and you've communicated with them for what your expectation is of the event as well. Anything that you'd like to add to this slide, Sue?
No, I think that's really important, but it's important too to let the attendees know ahead of time that you are working to strive towards this zero waste event. Let it be a celebration. Let them feel like they are helping make this a zero waste event as well. And you might want to just give them some incentives. So, hey, if you bring your own reusable water bottle, you'll get a free ticket for a hot dog. I don't know. But I'm just, I think that that's really, really important. And again, signage. You can see these pictures here. We tried to put some visuals in there, but there's signage all over. So if you're doing a food waste recycling area, not only are your employees trained on that, but look at the can. It's got signage on it too. The same signage, consistency.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk a little bit about signage and the importance of having signage and visuals. So we'll come back to that in a little bit.
I don't think we have to beat this one with a dead horse, Heather. I mean, we've talked about the importance of communication with your event planners, your vendors, your contractors. Here it all is. That is so important. That's probably the most important education piece that you're going to have prior to the actual event.
Okay. So this is a quite long checklist. And again, this is not exhaustive. This is just an example of something that the city of Orlando uses, but it really gives a good overview of what you might want to request from your vendors. Your vendors are going to need the guidance from you to help meet your expectations. The last thing you want to have is a vendor who has prepared all his wares or her wares to be there to support your event, and they're not necessarily in alignment with your zero waste. So giving them an outline and having a vendor checklist for yourself will help to guide the event and make sure that you're meeting the standards, not only that you've set forth for your vendors, but also the standards that you set forth for the event. Sue?
I think that's pretty much it. I love this checklist because it gives you some nitty gritty details, just things, that you may not have thought about. Especially coming to my mind, like to-go containers. That's always such a big elephant in the room. What can I do to get rid of those those nasty styrofoam to-go containers? Maybe using coffee mugs instead of cups is a big thing. So I think thinking about all these little details, because the devil is the detail, right? So making sure you've addressed all those little details before the event.
Agree. So marketing and communication. So we touched on this a little bit earlier in the presentation. So before your event even takes place, it's going to be vitally important that you engage all, the individuals that you want to come and participate. If you don't have their buy-in and their engagement prior to showing up, you almost are setting yourself up for contamination, confusion, and not reaching that 90% goal that you've set to host a zero waste event. So promotion and marketing before the event signage, and staff and volunteer training. And staff and volunteer training doesn't mean that you give them information and training and then you walk away. It's constant. It's before the event, it's during the event, it's after the event, it's reminding them, it's making sure that they are an integral part of your success. Because if you have everybody that's buying in and everybody that's knowledgeable, then you're helping yourself to not only at the end of the day be able to do a quality audit, be able to have quality materials that are being used at the event, but you're also making it successful for everyone else who participated.
And I think too, Heather, the importance of knowing that your staff and your volunteers are going to have the checklists too. But every staff member and every volunteer is going to have their own kind of area of expertise, or maybe area that they really feel passionate about. So let them help in that particular area. Like, for example, I personally love to do food audits after a big event. I would want to be on that committee. Make sure you know what their buy-in is.
So marketing and communications, and I won't, take the time to read all of this, but there are just so many things that you can do when you're talking about a zero waste event. And it really depends. Is it inside zero waste? Is it outside zero waste? Is it that hybrid model where there are some inside events, some outside events? Every type of event is going to need a different type of support. But the basic promotion and marketing, those types of things can sort of be universal. So again, signage, making sure that they have various means of gaining that education. It has to be written, it needs to be visual, there needs to be some type of electronic communication. Sue just mentioned about making sure that your staff are trained. People just love to ask questions. They even if it's there for them to read, there for them to see, sometimes it's just easier to engage with a friendly face. So make sure that your staff are very well trained on answering the questions that can promote sustainability at your event. Printing is something that you might not want to do. Again, it sort of just depends on your event, but minimize your printing. Everyone has a phone, most everyone has a phone, and making things virtual, using social media, maybe get an app just for the event that shows where different water stations are, where they can, rent a bicycle or charge their transportation station if they have the electric bikes. So making things electronic is also a wonderful option, but promotion and marketing of the event is going to be important to make sure that you keep your attendees educated on the options that they have to help you move towards zero waste.
I agree. And just real briefly, I would say that educating attendees way before the event. So continuing to educate them a month out, a week out, 2 weeks out. Oh, by the way, don't forget to bring your own water bottle. Oops, registration's all online. We won't have any swag items, but if you want a swag item from a booth, here's the QR for it. Those kind of things, letting them know what's coming when they arrive at the event.
Absolutely. Event signage too.
To me, signage is everything, because as Heather will talk briefly about later, you have just that very few seconds to engage someone through the visual aspect of signage. So you don't want it to be too overwhelming, but you want it to be clearly marked throughout the event, in the front of the house and the back of the house. Strategically putting your signage where attendees can see it, your volunteers, because your volunteer staff is gonna be different than your hired staff. So making sure that they can see that. And then when there is turnover, so when a volunteer leaves, but a new one comes on, they too can pick it up if they weren't properly trained or if they weren't trained at all. And then even something as important as signage in your bathrooms, outside, like Heather said, for vendor stations, food waste stations, it's just really important. So here in the United States, we work, well, especially in Florida, we work with a company that has very, very universal signage. So all of our events here in this county have all the same signage, no matter where you go. I just think that that's personally something we need to strive to as a country as a whole, because we just have way too much signage. That's all.
It definitely makes it easy for when individuals know that if they're going here, it's repetitive, and it kind of ingrains into their being that, oh, they see this and they know what to do, as opposed to going there and it looks different there, it looks different here, it causes confusion. So I agree with you on that, Sue. We also got a question in the chat. So swag is, for example, if you go to a conference and you get a bag and then there's papers in the bag, and it's just the tchotchkes, the giveaways, those types of things. So that's kind of what swag is. So that's what we call swag here in Florida.
Sorry about that. I should have made that clear. And a lot of these events, you're thrown up with all that stuff. You get this bag full of the pen and the,
Yeah.
the flyer. Yeah, too much. Good question.
Okay, staff and volunteer training, Sue.
Again, I'm not going to read all these bullets, but boy, just to make sure that you have that core staff that's really trained, and let them do the work for you. Let them reach out to the volunteers and help them. Give your volunteers incentives. You know, they're volunteering to be there, so give them some kind of a incentive, whether it maybe is a free t-shirt. You know, makes you feel important when you've got the staff t-shirt on, something like that, that they stand out above and beyond, and thank them. What a simple concept, right? Thank them for being there. Thank them for helping. Acknowledge what they're doing, that's helping to make this a zero waste event.
So here is a diagram, and Sue and I are going to work in tandem for this, and just it's just a really good visual of how at least the city of Orlando has set up some of their events. And if you can, if you're able to see this clearer, you can see that there's dining areas, and then there's the trash recycling and food waste bins. And then the food trucks and caterers are in one option, but then one space, but then they also list the detailed bullets of what the expectation is for food trucks and caterers and the water refill station. So again, you're going to receive this in a PDF format after this event, but it's just a wonderful way for someone to visually see what the expectation is of the setup. It's a great tool for staff and volunteers, and it's also a really good tool for the attendees. And the attendees might not need all of the details that your vendors might need, as far as no digital receipts and things of that nature, but just to see where things are. Oh, the closest water station is here, so let's go fill up our water bottle. This is where the recycling and food waste bins are. This is where we're going to put our trash. So it just gives a really good visual, and it also helps to transcend language barriers, or barriers for someone who might not necessarily be able to understand the written components, or even the digital components. Visuals really work well.
And this is something that can be transformed for an inside event or an outside event. It's very flexible. So your food trucks and catering for outdoor event could equate to the service line that you have during the event. What I love about this, and what I love about what Orlando does best, and it's not on here per se, but they use a lot of those symbols. So right off the bat that this icon symbol for the fork and the knife cross means, oh, there's food here, or the water drop is from the water station, or whatever their symbols are. Make sure you give that to your attendees up front, and your staff and your employees, so they know exactly where everything is. It just makes it really simple and quick.
So we've talked about before the event. Let's talk a little bit about during the event. And we are going to, again, we aren't going to spend a lot of detail in reading these. We're just going to hit the highlights for the sake of time. But if you have any questions, our contact information is at the end of this presentation, and we're happy to take questions. So would you like to kick off during the event?
Sure. So, zero waste stations are really, really important, and you're going to see some visuals of what they actually look like. But the goal for the zero waste station is to make sure that if you are composting, your compost is available at that spot. If you are recycling, your recycling is at that spot, and your garbage is at that spot. So everything is kind of there for the attendees and the volunteers to break down, again, properly labeled with the signage. And this not only lets you have a higher zero waste event, but it also reduces your contamination and helps improve education, really. And again, I'm not going to say enough about signage, but really important.
Well, let's look at some signage.
There we go. So this is just a really good example, a visual of a zero waste station. And you can see your employee or your staff or your volunteer, who's ever back there, is very knowledgeable on what can go in each bin and what is supposed to be sorted. And this can be done on a large scale for a large event. It can be done on a small scale for a small event. What I love about this is when I see this visually, I know exactly where I gotta go to get rid of this. It's perfect. So it might take a little bit of time to set up, but it's really worth it.
It's about providing that education, and it is a constant ongoing thing that you have to do. But once they have it, it really helps you on the back end to work towards zero waste.
This is an example of Orlando signage. Ours here in Indian River County is a little bit different, and yours is going to be a little bit different. But again, making sure that whatever signage you choose to use at your event, that it is consistent. So anywhere on the campus of the event, you will know what a landfill, what that obviously is garbage, what recycling and what food waste, if you're composting, would look like. This is
So
another,
here-
go ahead. I just was gonna say, this is a great slide. I love it because these are actual stations at events.
Mhm.
So it gives you a good example of what a plastic-free water station would look like. The middle one there is a refill station for water. You can see the bike valet parking area there is really well marked. And then the signage for the electric vehicles.
I really love the refillable stations. They definitely are popping up a lot here in Florida. And I think it's just a really great way to encourage not utilizing those plastic water bottles, but bring your own, bring your own.
That's right. And again, those maps that you provide for your attendees and your staff will coincide with those particular areas. So yeah, we're going to address this one together, Heather, right?
Yeah.
So data is everything. Data, how are we going to measure our event in its data? And that's simply how we have to address this. One of the greatest ways is waste audits. So after your event, you're going to be working closely with your back of the house to make sure that you have your waste separated from your recycled material or your compost material. And a lot of that is done through weight in volume, especially a lot of the water stations will tell you how much water you're actually saving by using that reusable water station. So that's kind of important too. I'm going to let you piggyback on what I just said, Heather, and then if you want, you can just address the CEPA, which is works in tandem with our EPA. So important. Go ahead. I'll be quiet now.
No. Well, so I mean, you're spot on. Once you've planned before the event and during the event, there's always the after the event, and that's where you get your information, your data. How well did you perform? And it gives you some standards to set for next year and some key performance indicators on what you might want to improve on. And again, when you're going into your zero waste event, don't expect perfection. And I hope that you really walk away with that, at least from this talk. Don't expect perfection. Don't expect.
You're going to have contamination. It's going to be there. There's no doubt about it. People make mistakes. But whether it's 20% or 60% makes a big difference when you're planning a zero waste event.
That's right. That's right. And so as Sue was saying, post-event, there are some metrics and reporting that you can utilize. For here in the United States, again, every state does something a little bit differently, but we do have the Environmental Protection Agency here. And as Sue was sharing, they work closely with SEPA, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. So SEPA may have something similar, and you may want to consult their website to see if they also have something for you to utilize for your own events. But EPA has the EPA WARM model, and that's the waste reduction model. And this particular model provides estimates on greenhouse gas reduction, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. It also provides energy savings and other economic impacts for about 60 different types of materials. And on their website, you can type in EPA WARM model and it will take you to their website. It will give you the formula. It shows you how to use the tool. It tells you what materials that they include in their particular model for your usage. And it really gives a lot of information, but that is one tool that can be utilized to help you work towards zero waste events. You can also reach out to environmental consultants to help you work towards producing an audit so that you do have those metrics for each year as a baseline for standards for what, again, worked well and what you can improve on. Or you can just start small and start to do your own and go in there and look at the material after and see where is the contamination. But work with your local governing bodies, reach out to someone and find your post-event measurements and reporting. Keep a list so that you do have some type of record for what worked well and how you can improve moving forward. Anything else to add, Sue? Okay. So before we move and work towards the close of this presentation, we would just like to thank Joe England and the City of Orlando for sharing their information here. Joe has a link that you can sign up for their newsletters and their email list, and they do a really good job. It's called the Greenworks Academy, and it may just serve as nuggets of information for you to utilize as you're working towards your zero waste event. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about communication and how to embrace the zero waste revolution. And I'm really just going to focus on messaging. Messaging is so important. We talked a little bit about visuals earlier in today's talk. So research shows that about 65% of people are visual learners, meaning that they will see and understand something faster than you telling them reading it. How many times has someone said something to you and you're in thought somewhere else and you probably haven't even heard what they said? It happens a lot, but people really align with visuals. So visuals matter. Make sure that your information is presented visually. They're going to see it and embrace it much faster than they would written and or audio. Sue?
Yes, and again, to just address it also will help with those language barriers. That's a big, huge thing.
Absolutely. So once you have your messaging, and make sure that you vary your messaging. You don't want to just have everything electronic. You definitely want to have it there in signage format, QR codes, social media. You need to diversify your messaging across multiple platforms before the event, during the event, and after the event. Thank them for coming. Share your results, share your success stories, share how they helped to make sure that your event was what you wanted it to be. It really is encouraging to individuals to know that they contributed to your success. They're going to feel like they bought into it. And the more you do it during the event, before the event, and after the event, you can even say these many individuals have committed to bringing their own reusable water bottle. That might encourage other people to do it before they even get there. That's important to do because it helps the consistency, and doing it across multiple platforms will make sure that you're reaching a breadth of your audience. Short bursts of information. Here I'm sharing the Recycle Florida Today, benefits of recycling guide. And if you notice, it takes 5 seconds or so to read. It needs to be short, like really, really fast. People are not going to spend a lot of time reading things. Pair it with something that's a visual to them as well. Sue talked about with the City of Orlando, how on that map, how they, like if you were eating, it was the red fork and knife. They knew if they saw that they were going to be eating something, they could purchase food. The refillable water station was the blue water drop. Pair it with a visual that individuals can tie to their memory. Again, visuals matter. And it helps them to remember what action you want for them to do. Individuals are so much more prone to doing what you want them to do when you tell them, and it's hard for individuals to remember what you don't want them to do. So tell them what you want, tell them what you want, tell them what you want. And that way you're not getting that confusion on the action, and it won't help to contribute to your contamination. Sue?
No, that's it. Good.
Okay, so we're going to work soon. There's about 3 resources that we're going to share here. And then Sue and I are going to offer you some case studies, and these are visuals and some videos. So our members at Recycle Florida Today help to provide some resources, and these resources are available on our website. And through this PDF that you will receive, you will be able to click and or use this QR code to take you to the website. So there's the best management practices guides, and this will help you with waste reduction and recycling for special events and festivals. So I do remember hearing, I think there was someone here that was with a festival and or event. Even for tourism, this is a really good guide. It was done in partnership with our state of Florida Department of Environmental Protection and Kessler Consulting, Inc. And it's a really good, robust guide to help you with best management practices. So that is available on our website. We spent a lot of time on the guide to green works for events. So you can download that complete guide. It's very, very full. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of what we went over, and that you can download as well. And that is also on our website. And last, this is a one-pager that was provided by Hillsborough County. Sue talked about the 5 R's, and Hillsborough County has given you the 5 W's: the who, what, when, and where. Who is generating the waste? Who will be emptying the receptacles? When and where is the waste going to go, and why do you want to do this? So again, a zero waste event is about 90%. You might have some waste. What is going to happen to it? So don't, even though you're working towards zero waste, for the things that you do have a plan in place for those things as well, so that you are responsibly moving those materials to the place where they need to be. And even with the contamination, so be prepared. And now we're going to talk about some case studies from local Florida festivals and events. And Sue's going to kick us off with Tortuga.
Yes, Tortuga is a huge venue that takes place every year. More than 100,000 people attended last year. And Jill, if you can call me, I think it was more towards 200,000. It's slated to take place in the middle of April again this year. But last year was the very first year that Xavier, my friend from Renewable, who is a composting company, partnered with my other good friend Anastasia, who owns Lean Orb. You can see their contact information below. She has all of her compostable and biodegradable products. And they partnered together in an agreement with all of the vendors that were participating at Tortuga, that they had to use these compostable products. So they were no longer able to come in with their plastic silverware. Everything has to be sustainable. And they did compost and recycle. You can see the bins, the picture of the bins there. They were able to divert a huge amount of food waste overall. And Xavier gave me some pretty good takeaways, which I thought were important for me to share before you see the video. They were able to get their contamination rate down between 10 to 15%. But it was a very labor intensive operation, 7 days. They worked 15-hour days. They had more than 250 waste or compost stations in the front of the house. And each caterer in the back of the house had their own 55-gallon drum for recycling. They ran over 1,000 golf carts every single day just to empty these actual receptacles that you see here. You can see the signage. They're very well marked, and their signage was consistent throughout the event anywhere you went. Xavier did feel that more education was needed, and you will see this in the video, that they could have used other means, including some of the big screens, to educate the attendees before and during the event on what the processes was going to be. And then they did say that, he said, to make sure that you hold your contracts and your vendors accountable, because what they had found was their contracts with these vendors were not robust enough. So some of them were sneaking in their own plastic cups and other things. So you want to make sure that you have that commitment. And then he said, make sure if it's an outdoor event to plan for rain, because the bags in their composting containers are also compostable. And as they got wet, they started to break down quicker than they were supposed to. So I think the biggest takeaway there is there's always going to be those little details again, you know, that that you'll come up with and you'll evaluate for the next event. And they did do that as well. So they're getting ready for this year's event. Heather, you want to add anything?
No, Sue, what I love that you always share, and I'm going to start the video. So can you fill them in a little bit on this false floor?
Yeah, so you can see the whole point of this sustainable event is to protect our oceans, and that's their mission and vision. And so you can see that they're keeping, not only is it a sustainable zero waste event, but they're keeping anything from entering the ocean. So they have the fence line there. Underneath the fence line where all those people are is a false floor. And they do that to protect the sand so that the garbage and stuff isn't going to later wash into the water. So that whole thing there is one big flat floor underneath the sand, which you wouldn't know about. It's pretty
To me,
cool.
it's so amazing. It really is the amount of work that went into this particular event here. It's just amazing.
Very labor intensive, but I think, again, the biggest takeaway is that they've learned from last year, and every year it gets better.
I agree. So that Tortuga is an example of an outside beachside event. We are now going to share the Boca Raton Bowl.
The Solid Waste Authority is looking to establish a solid event recycling program. And the Boca Bowl was our first chance to test our pilot project to see how successful it could be.
This is one of the larger events in Palm Beach County, and we felt as if it would be a marquee event.
We plan on doing event recycling by placing containers in areas that we feel that people will recycle. One of the goals is always having a recycle bin next to a trash can. Our staff at Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, we went and we cleaned and got our containers stickered and got them all ready to bring them down here. And we placed the 25, the smaller containers, outside underneath the tents where the party areas are.
We learned a lot at the Boca Bowl and a lot of things we're going to take into the next steps so the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County can be a leader in the state in event recycling.
And so we gave an example of 2 outside events. As an inside event, just as an example, again, some of the things you might want to do is challenge your host venue to work with you. Do they have food reduction or food waste programs? Do they have an option for you to work with a local food bank or food community service, take any of your not utilized food and share with that particular outreach or local community? Are they able to allow for you to allow your attendees to take any unused food so that it isn't being wasted? Can they leave it out for an extra 15 to 30 minutes so that it can be consumed? Utilizing glass cups as opposed to the paper cups, or definitely not the plastic cups, but some host venues might want to utilize paper cups, but challenge them to utilize glassware as opposed to plastic or paperware. Water stations as opposed to pictures of water, allow people to go up and do that. Again, apps, lessen your printing or eliminate printing altogether, and just other types of things that you can do for on-site events. Again, a lot of this will also transcend to those that are inside. And so now we're going to just have a quick recap and then our closing slide and then Q&A. So Sue, you want to start out with our recap?
Sure. So just remembering the big 5, where to place your priorities before your event and even during your event, and how they coincide with those 5 W's, because really they are one and the same, working together with the who, what, where, when, and why. And making sure, again, the foundation really for any zero waste event is the partnerships that you form with your vendors, with your attendees, with your volunteers, with your staff, whoever it might be, just even the hotel that you're having the event in, making sure you build that foundation before your event. And then again, the placement of the containers, as Patty from the video talked about as well. That's a great strategy. Another strategy there is to make your recycle containers a little less accessible. So you notice that they had the hole on top so people couldn't stuff an entire plastic bag in there. That's another strategy that works really well. and making sure that your volunteers and staff are trained way before the event, working constantly throughout the event with them. And then, of course, we adjust the messaging and communication. Heather did a great job of that, how important that is.
Wonderful recap, Sue. Before we close, we'd like to give a special thank you to the City of Orlando, Joe England of the City of Orlando, for sharing his green guide to green events. We'd also like to thank our contributing members, Hillsborough County Government, Hillsborough County, Florida, Kessler Consulting, Inc., and the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County. I'd also like to give a big thank you to my counterpart here, Ms. Sue Flak of Indian River County. I'm Heather Armstrong. Sue, would you like to say anything before we close?
No, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. We could have gone on for days to talk about things, but we are always here as a resource for you in any way we can help. And so is Joe England, by the way, and of course, Heather. So we're all here.
Well, a big thank you to GMIST for having us. We are, again, just so appreciative that you welcome this content, and hopefully it's something that you can utilize. So thank you for having us today.
And thank you guys. It was a lot of wonderful, wonderful information. I'm sure everyone got something out of it. Anybody have any questions now? The girls would certainly be happy to answer them for you.
Yeah, I have a couple actually. So the most hard struggle we have is like Buktush is a quite older population. So we want to reduce on flyers and like to hand out things, but it's QR codes are just not going to work with like 60 plus people that like don't even know how things on their smartphone work. So do you have any suggestions on other ways we could like spread information?
And that is, Nita, that is such a great point, because we have an older population even in our county, and trust me when I tell you, they'll call and go, well, I don't even have a computer. So one of the easiest ways during the event and even before the event is the electronic signage. Have your electronic signage there. We were just at, it was the FFEA event, wasn't it, Heather? And they had electronic signage everywhere. Oh, easy for an older person that doesn't have a computer to read, right? And you may not be able to have that opportunity to have pre-registration online because an older person doesn't know how to do that. But limiting the amount of registration you have there, whether it's you go ahead and punch all their information in on the computer while you're there, so that they don't have to fill out a paper, kind of thing.
I completely hear you, because my parents are in that age too, and it's just, you'd almost just say, let me do it all for you, because it is challenging. I think, if you remember that zero waste is 90%. If you have a population, if you just send one flyer, maybe it can go into your 10% waste, because you don't want, giving them the information is what you definitely want to do, because if you don't give it to them beforehand, they come with plastic water bottles, they come with the swag, they come with everything else that's going to put you over that 90% for zero waste. But so maybe if you just print one flyer and you send it to them, and then you let them know on that flyer, this is where you find this information, this is the number that you can call. If you have questions, put a recorded line on so that they just call, and it gives them all the information that they, maybe even put a couple of options. What can we bring to the event? What can we wear? What vendors, what? Give them some options. But again, don't think that zero waste means 100% waste free. It is not going to mean that. You are going to have some contamination. You are going to have some waste. But if you don't educate your attendees prior to getting there, you're going to have so much more of it. So
yeah, okay, perfect. I still had a couple other questions, if that's okay. So the waste audit that you were talking about, so I get you, we have to measure how much recycling we got and how much, but are you also going through, for example, the recycling and seeing what is wrong, and are you actually putting it in the right ones after? Or is it just the intention to measure it, write it down, and leave it as it is?
No, so obviously well, we have strict regulations as far as recycling and what can go in there. And so we want to look for that contamination and remove it if possible.
Okay.
Sometimes that's not possible, like for example, some kind of food waste, food waste that gets in with your recycled material may contaminate it too heavily. But then also make record of that too. So if I have 10 pounds of recycled material that is being contaminated by food and I have to toss it, making a note of that too. So then how can I better educate the attendees next time that, they're putting a lot of food waste. And Tortuga had that problem actually. And that's why he said that better education before the event would have been more important to reduce some of that. He had some of the plasticware that was going into the compostable material. So they had some of that. You're going to have some, but it helps you to better educate next year. Plan for that.
Okay, thank you. And just one more. So we're also having a lot of trouble finding volunteers because you said like on the PowerPoint, like find volunteers who are interested in sustainability. But like I said, it's kind of hard in this community to find people like that are in these interests. And we're just trying to find ways of how to encourage people to just even be a volunteer. So I was wondering if you have any ideas on like encouraging people to become volunteers, and that if you don't really find a group of people that are interested necessarily in sustainability or.
Well, Sue, I think gave a lot of great suggestions earlier on, highlight them, encourage them and recognize and celebrate them for being a volunteer. A shirt, I'm a volunteer, I'm a zero waste volunteer, really celebrate them for wanting to volunteer for your conference. Maybe do something hybrid where if it's a multi-day event, they volunteer for one day and then the rest of the event, they get to participate without cost to them. So they are receiving something for donating their time. And I think just those small areas of rewarding them for participating, because at the end of the day, you definitely want to be able to draw them with something that they feel is valuable, and maybe giving that sort of halfway point where they can participate, but also enjoy the event might be something that could really encourage participation for your event that you're hosting. Sue, any other suggestions?
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that too. So it's important to give them those little nibbles of enticement, but also to educate them on why you're doing this. Why is it important to have a zero waste event? Why are we doing this? And that might include, I hate to say it, some, pretty bold statistics as to we're wasting 1/4 of the food that we're serving here, or whatever it is. Not to be negative or a doggy downer, but just to give them some education as to why you're really holding this event. Why is it important to our world? Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. It was really helpful.
Absolutely.
I'm glad, and reach out to us if you need anything else.
Right.
We got
Thank
a
you so
lot going
much.
on over there with that.
Thank you for that question. They were really good. Is there anyone else with any more questions? I am aware of everybody's time and everybody is busy. I want to thank everyone for attending, and please don't forget to complete the survey at the end of the session. And also we GMIST have all kinds of upcoming programs. So if you want to check them out, our website is gmist.ca. And thanks again for everyone that attended. Bye, everyone.
Bye.